What's up, guys? National Master Dem Apples here, back with another video. Hope you all are doing well. Yes, I did become a National Master last tournament. I'll be, updating on that later. So, I'm gonna introduce this really interesting, opening for white. It works against almost anything black plays against e4, e5. And, like, usually this happens, but sometimes black goes bishop c5, and different things happen, right? And you don't want to be playing this old boring thing where they go like here, and then you go like here, and then 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 here. Like, this is boring. Why not play some sort of aggressive opening? And that's exactly what we're trying to cover here today. So after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. The two main moves here, and what almost everyone will play, is knight f6 or bishop c5, which is what we'll be covering. Let's go with knight f6 first. So this is a really interesting opening. I played this I played this for the longest time ever, and it's great that I get to introduce it to more people. So d4. Now, at first glance, you're like, wait, doesn't that hang two pawns in like three different ways? Well, yes and no. So let's say black takes this pawn with the knight. Now, white has multiple options here, but one of them is this very flashy tactic. And after the king moves, queen takes here. Black has lost castling rights. White is just clearly better here. That's just one of the many ways to refute it. The other move that looks interesting and that we should take a look at is knight takes pawn on e4. But this is pretty easily refuted, since after just the simple pawn takes pawn, black's knight is really misplaced. And the thing is, white threatens queen d5 with the threat of checkmate and on the knight. So like, let's say that black does nothing, queen d5, and black is losing a piece. He cannot defend both at the same time. Say like knight g5 just hangs the knight because the bishop is defended. So all these are bad, and black only has one good move, and that is to take this pawn. After taking this pawn, you might think, well, what are we going to do? Take this pawn back? Well, no, this just leads to a slightly worse game for us. So instead, we castle, prioritizing development. Now, here, black has multiple moves. Most of them, but only two of them really make sense. Knight takes pawn and bishop to c5. So let's take a look at knight takes pawn first. After knight takes e4, which is the main move, white goes rook e1, pinning the knight to the king, and you're like, oh, I win, right? Not so fast, black goes d5. But here, white has this insane move. It's theory, but like, if you want to try to guess the move, go ahead. And the move is bishop takes pawn. Oh my gosh. So now this knight is really under fire. And so black obviously has to take this free bishop. But after the amazing move, knight to c3, attacking the queen and the knight, black is forced to give the piece back. Black cannot take this knight because the pawn is pinned, which is a really nice detail. And there are two moves here, queen a5 and queen h5, both of which respond to in about the same way. After queen to a5, we just take this free knight back. And after bishop b6, knight eg5, putting pressure on this bishop. Castles, takes. We reached a very interesting and double-edged position. Different than your normal, like, e4, e5 copycat game, you know? This is interesting. In this kind of position, obviously black has some pressure on the king side, but white has a lot of like nice central action that he can use. He controls the e-file pretty well, and the computer's actually saying king d7, which I find interesting. Black can also go queen h5 here, but again, we just take the knight back. Very logical. Bishop e6. Now we go bishop g5 here. The reason we go bishop g5 here is because we prevent black from castling, and this is pretty annoying for him in this case. Now, knight eg5 is also possible, but it's not as good here because in this case, black's queen is on h5, and there's some weird tactics, but also the fact that black's queen is over here means that he can start an attack on white's king a bit easier. So after castles, so white goes bishop g5, preventing black from castling, and after bishop d6, the main move, white can take, and after bishop f4, hitting the weak pawn on d6, queen d5, c3, we reach a pretty equalish position, but, you know, it is what it is if your opponent plays the best moves. Now let's see what happens when your opponent does not play the best moves. First of all, knight takes e4 here is like the best move. And it's only best, and it only leads to an equal position for black if he knows all these moves. Like, black can mess up right here. Say they do something stupid. I don't know, knight d8. Oh, wow, they got checkmated. But this is a very scary thing. Like, look at this. Even the very logical bishop g7 is not really the best after bishop g5. Like, say here, and something like this. Just for example, right? White has tremendous pressure on black's king and can even consider checkmating ideas. So let's take a look at the other main move, bishop to c5. Now, you might think, okay, well, black's defended their pawn. Now we have nothing, right? But no, we do. Pawn e5. And now there are a couple moves. The best move and pretty much only move is pawn to d5. Knight g4 is also common at the lower level. But after, there's a flashy continuation, bishop f7. Again, this bishop takes f7 sacrifice, followed by picking up this knight is very nice for white, because black has lost castling rights and stuff like that. But the more principled continuation is just the simple bishop f4, and black's knight is very misplaced. For example, after castles h3, knight h6 takes, black has already been forced to compromise his pawn structure, and this f6 square is looking really, really juicy right now. So after e5, d5 is the main move. Let's check knight to e4. Knight e4 is like one of the many ways black can really mess up here. And that's because after queen e2, the knight is simply trapped. Like, it's trapped, or white just wins a ton of material. So the knight can't go here, can't go here, can't go here, or here, right? Meaning that black has to protect it with d5 or f5. Now, f5 is really bad, because after ef6, like, what are you doing? Your knight is still under attack. You have to go d5 anyways. So I'm going to look at d5. And after ed6, black still needs to protect this, so he has to protect it. But then after even something like knight d2, yeah, black is losing this knight. So after pawn to d5, we go on a capturing spree. Takes. Well, no, just kidding. Rook e1, we throw in this check first. Now, it's not in black's interest to protect this pawn. It really is not worth the trouble. There are multiple moves here, but computer right now is saying knight d2. Feel like f takes, g should be fine as well, and so is bishop g5, which is a pretty nasty move. Because after takes, you'd say black wins another pawn, but this is really, really dangerous for black. Like, computer is saying stuff like queen c1, just to get the queen over here, and just checkmate, simply. And of course, white can play it slow by moving the knight in, and, I don't know, doing whatever they like. This is pretty nasty for black. And again, if black ever moves this queen, like, there is just back rank checkmate, which is pretty cool. This is very dangerous for black. So after rook e1 check, bishop e6 is like the only move. And after pawn takes pawn, now I believe knight g5 is another move, and it's the more popular move, but I checked this in the database, and it scores way better. So after pawn takes pawn, rook g8, bishop g5, very logical, just attacking, just taking free pawns, you know? Bishop e7. There is a very cool way black can mess up. So queen d7 is obviously like a possible move after which we would just develop. Get our knight into f6 or something like that. We threaten this pawn as well right now. It's not a very common move, queen d7. Most people would go queen d5 if they were in this position. But this is really bad because after knight to c3, yet again, taking advantage of the pinned pawn, Black's queen is actually toast. So first of all, he can't take here because this bishop is pinned. But after queen f5, knight e4 threatening the bishop, and rook takes g7, knight h4, and the queen is actually toast. It has nowhere to go, which I found quite funny, honestly. Now let's take a look. If queen g4, which looks safe, there is a fork. And queen e5, which looks safe, there is still knight f6, and white wins the queen. And also, after queen d5, there is another fork. So black's queen is actually trapped here, and black is just much worse here. White is just winning. So after this, black has to play bishop e7. Now, the reason we say this is really aggressive is because we just sacrifice a pawn at the beginning of the opening, and then we go for this crazy huge attack where we're not necessarily better. You have to understand that chess is a very equal game, but black has to walk a tightrope to equality. And if not, you still get a fun and playable position, which is equal, but not drawish. So this is why I really like this opening. So after bishop e7, bishop takes, very logical. And there are 3 ways to take, and believe it or not, king takes e7 is the main line. Most people will not play this. Most people will play queen takes, but after knight takes pawn, rook d8 pretty much forced, c3 protecting the knight takes, and queen. This strong move, queen f3. White is just a bit better because of all this pressure. Black still cannot castle. After knight d4, c d4, and queen rook d4, queen b7 is strong. Black's pawns are not very good. There's not much coordination happening right here. I can tell you that for sure. Like, these pieces are just sitting ducks. Knight c3. Evaluation's only plus 0.2 or 0.3, which I find very surprising. Maybe it's just on low depth, but this looks absolutely crushing for white. And the other move is king takes e7. Now, it's important to note that knight takes e7 isn't really the best because white can go take here scot-free and threaten this, as well as some nasty things if black cover takes back. So king takes e7, surprisingly, is the most common move. But after this very nice move, rook to e4, it becomes apparent that black can't really defend his pawn. So usually black will either push or take. Let's take a look at taking a free pawn. After takes, we have an interesting good knight versus bad bishop. The reason why I say this is a pretty bad bishop is because, first of all, it's hitting this pawn here, but in a sense, it can't really move that much because black's king is still in the center. It needs some protection. So this is really nice for white. Just continue it a bit further so we don't hang our pawn on g2. And after rook d8, something like even knight c3. And this is similar to the previous position where black's king was stuck in the center. Black has double pawns here. So this is pretty nice for white. And if black goes d3, then we can just play knight d2 or knight c3. Just simple development. And we can play a positional game, right? This is equal material, but I don't really see a good way for black to defend this pawn. So like queen d3. Oop, nope, not queen d2, but rather queen d3. There is queen a4, and white seems to be doing pretty well. White can go here and try to maybe double up or do some weird stuff on the queen side according to the engine. This pawn is still under fire. This is looking pretty good for white. So, all in all, this is called the Max Lange attack. It's really good, especially, I'd say, at any level below 2000. Black has to walk a tightrope in order to reach an equal position, and the only person who's having fun is white, honestly. And I really like the knight c3 tactics. Those are going to just shock your opponent. It's not necessarily like they're winning after something like this, but, it's such a cool move to play. It's a really fun opening, and I recommend you try this out. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.